Hey, all you rad dads out there.
Welcome to the Rad Dad Show. Who are you?
I'm BJ Jezbera, a rad dad.
And expand on that. What do you do for a living? What's why we chatting with you?
Well, pre-COVID, I was a gigging musician for about 5 years. I was, playing regular gigs, making all my money through that. Giving some lessons on the side, and just 8 months ago, I became a dad. So also, about a year ago, COVID kind of shook the whole world up. So everything's kind of in a state of limbo right now. But still playing music for him, and me and my little guy Pete, we live stream every once in a while. He gets to hop on camera, and that's really what all the people want to see now. So
Yeah, yeah.
just me playing music and everybody staring at Pete.
8 months. So that's your relatively fresh new dad.
Yeah, I know. I look pretty put together for a new dad, but this is all fake.
So you got dressed up for the camera, the green screen, right?
Exactly. Yeah, this is just an avatar. This isn't even what I look like.
Um, so this you might have an interesting, take on this question. Do you consider, 8 months in, do you consider yourself a rad dad?
Yeah, I think so. Because especially early on, when he was just born, my wife was working full time, and I again was a musician. So I was working full time as a musician until COVID came in. He spent the better part of 6 months with just me, because after a month she had to go back to work. So uh, you know, every day we were waking up and figuring each other out. I'd play him some guitar, we'd go for a walk, we'd do everything. But I've been all about this little guy since he was born.
What are some of the traits that you think make one a rad dad?
Being there is was part of it for sure. But you know, also just kind of like I'm instilling in him a little bit of my feistiness and my adventure, like my thirst for life. I think just he's gonna grow up, skateboarding, playing music, and video games. He's gonna be a little rad guy wearing flannels too.
Wearing the flannel suit.
That's a key. It's a key to being rad.
So how do you how do you right now, he's pretty young. What's his name? Did you share his name?
Yeah, his name's Peter. We call
Peter?
him Pete.
Pete? Um, so is that kind of what you're hoping is like him, growing up to be, a skateboarder into music, that kind of thing? Is
I
that
don't know.
something you're cognizant of? No, it's
I
kind
don't
of
really
a
have like expectations or like hopes for whatever. Like my only hope is that like he grows up happy and healthy, and I'm gonna do everything I can to make that happen and facilitate, whatever he's into. Really, I'm gonna introduce him to stuff, and if it sticks, it sticks. But obviously, we're gonna start with my interests and then kind of see where he develops and grows into. Because especially right now, he's just kind of like interested in his fingers and eating. But once he kind of grows into a little person and starts doing his own thing, like I'm stoked to see what he wants to do. I feel like he's going to be an opposite of me. He'll probably be a really good student or like an athlete, which I was neither of the two. So I'm just excited to see what he kind of turns into, and not try to force myself on him, but definitely share my interests.
Yeah. How did how do you manage, being, so are you like at home all the time with him and your wife's at
Not
right now?
anymore.
No?
A couple months ago, I started working full time just
Oh,
because
okay.
with this pandemic going on, music is going to be in a weird spot for a while, especially at the level I'm at. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it's tough for everyone. Even people that you know I guess look at like bands. Like I'm a big Bad Religion fan, for example. Like, and kind of follow them on social media, and just like I just couldn't imagine if and in your case too, having that as your the way you make a living, and just everything's kind of just shut down. How have
yeah.
you how have you dealt with that?
I pretty much just switched over all to digital, doing live streams and still recording and putting out music and releasing stuff. So even working full time and being a dad full time, two big full time jobs. I still have a third full time job of music, but just since there's no live shows, just kind of transition into whatever you can do. And you were talking about Bad Religion. It's funny because they just started doing live streams, or they did a live stream recently, and I feel like This whole pandemic was like a leveling the playing field almost, because you got big bands like Bad Religion and then small like dive bar guys like me all trying to figure it out at the same time. And I adjusted real quick, started live streaming immediately, got it all dialed in. And you see these like big bands like kind of dipping their toes into the pool, and it's kind of funny, like obviously they have the audience to do a big successful one, but I have the technology to do it by myself without having to hire somebody. So
Yeah,
it's kind of just see how everybody deals with it.
yeah. I watched the Decades thing, and it was kind of neat, but it doesn't replace the idea of live music for sure.
No,
Um,
absolutely.
and yeah, the technology. I'm a school teacher, and so I've had to kind of adapt as well. Trying to do some classes online and stuff like that. It's just
Doing
like
classes.
it's just a weird thing. What's the most rewarding aspect of being a dad of a young kid so far?
I don't know. It's crazy. I can't really describe it, but it's just a feeling that you get, like just every day waking up and being like, all right, it's another day. Kept him alive. Let's keep it going. But it's cool. I think it'll feel more rewarding, once he's like able to reciprocate the love. Like he's developing a little bit of a personality, but for the first like 6 months, he was just a monster, just so grumpy and screaming all the time. But now he's chilled out. He's a little more happy. But like I think I'll feel super rewarded once he can like give a kiss back or something.
Yeah, it definitely. From my son is 9, and so it's not saying that stage of being young, kind of pre-1 isn't good and fun, but it gets better.
No, it's totally fun and it's awesome. It's great to see him like developing his personality, but
Yeah,
I feel like once he has it, then it'll be a little more like, all right, game time.
yeah, yeah. When I think the biggest thing for me was like I really enjoyed the transition of not having to change the diaper anymore. It's like, okay, like that's like a
You
milestone.
gotta
I
change your
remember.
own.
Yeah, and then also we just kind of took away the booster seat, like car type seat that he had, and so it's like,
Oh,
yeah, he could buckle himself in. That's just like, okay, let's go.
I
Let's go.
cannot wait to get rid of this car seat. It weighs like a million pounds, and he's a heavy kid too, so it's
Yeah.
like such a was trying to carry it.
I my car seat story is, I remember when we had to take my son home from the hospital. It was like the next day or the day after he was born, and the nurse is like, okay, you got to go get the car seat. And it was in my son's mom's car, and I didn't know how to take it out of the thing. Like it was like in a base.
Out of the base.
It
Yeah.
was like the worst. So I like brought the whole thing, base and all, and the nurses just kind of look at me like, oh. Do you have any of those kind of stories of like,
Oh, I got plenty since day one.
yeah,
He's a pandemic baby, so when he was born, he came premature about a month. So he spent a week in the NICU and was strong, fine, healthy, everything. He was good. They just wanted to like monitor him, get his breathing and everything under control. And the rules of the hospital were, once you were in, you couldn't leave. You could leave one time, but you couldn't leave the premises. Like it was basically like they granted you like maybe a smoke break or something. And I'm not a smoker, so
yeah.
they're like, you can go outside once and then you're done. So we didn't know for sure if she was having the baby or not. It's kind of premature. So we were there for a couple days already, and it was really cold in the hospital. So I decided I was gonna go out get my jacket, and just being a complete ding dong, I almost wasted my one trip to just go get a jacket. I left all the baby stuff. I left all of my wife's clothes, everything else in the car. Just grabbed my jacket, come strolling back into the hospital, and luckily there was a security guard there. Like, you only have one trip, right? Yeah, and then he said, you might want to go get. Like, well, good idea. So came back, and yeah, my wife wanted to kill me, but it was funny. Good story now.
Yeah, no, that is a good one. Yeah, I like my brother had a baby. Him and his wife had a baby at the end of June, and it's been, I never thought of that term, pandemic baby. And so
Oh yeah.
kind of like, oh, okay, like yeah, like what, how would you define that? Just someone that a person that was born during this pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, someone that has his life has started in the throes of a lockdown and just a shifting world. Everything is going to be changed after this, and it's weird because we're not going to see the exact effects of it until these kids grow up. but just thinking in terms of he doesn't know people without a mask. He knows my wife and I. He knows a couple grandparents and some cousins maybe, but like everybody that he interacts with has a mask, and they're not allowed to touch him, which is crazy because everybody wants to hold babies. It's a big part of developing a child's mind is interacting and seeing faces and facial expressions. So and anytime we take them out, we have to wear the mask, and it kind of freaks them out a little bit. But it's just there's so many things that are subtle nuances in raising a baby that just get thrown out the window during a pandemic.
Yeah, and it's something I don't haven't really thought too much about, to be honest. Like now talking to you, so all these thoughts are in my mind. It's like, yeah, that's been the hardest is not being able. I've held my nephew twice since he was born, and yeah, it's hard. I could only really visit or see him outside, and so my brother's pretty staunch about people not coming into his house and stuff, and so it's like,
Good. Yeah.
so what's it like? Where are you right now? Where you live in California?
I live in Chula Vista, yeah, which is like
Yeah.
a little bit like maybe 5 minutes south of San Diego. We're basically the last stop before Mexico.
Oh, okay, and so what's it like there? Is it still kind of pretty locked down and whatnot, or?
They've started opening some stuff up, but it's still very, very locked down. And I think everybody's very trepidatious about it just because we all know at the drop of a hat, whenever somebody decides, you can just go back away.
Yeah.
And in my own personal life, it seems I could be a shut-in very easily. So it doesn't really change too much for me. It's just, yeah, I constantly think about how things are for Pete, like I want him to experience all the normal baby stuff, but it's hard because, you can't take him anywhere or do anything. So
Yeah, I
you
know.
find
It's really
alternatives.
tough. In what ways has fatherhood changed you?
Definitely made me more aware of the stupid things that I do. I used to be a risk taker and like, oh, there's a giant hill, let's go skateboard down it and drink 5 beers. Now it's more like, I want to get home tonight. So, I kind of dialed things back a little bit, and he became my focus. It used to be all music all the time. That was all I cared about. Now it's just taking care of this kid and, putting him in a position where he can hopefully follow his dreams later on when he grows up.
Nice, yeah, and that's kind of like a common theme that people it's like, yeah, oh, okay, I got to get up in the morning at maybe 4 or 5 in the morning. uh, Better not have that second beer.
Yeah, absolutely.
I get. Don't take. So you would say you take less risks with yourself personally.
Yeah, I still try to get fun in there, but yeah,
Exactly.
definitely.
That's why you're here. You still got to be rad.
Yeah, he's my little ride or die. So, it's not like I'm gonna be like, one beer for me, one beer for you. His dude, he's had his bottle and I've had my beer.
Did you have any fears about becoming a dad?
Um, I was reluctant to it all the way up until my wife told me she was pregnant. I was never like, you know, uh, I didn't feel like I was ready. And I don't think you ever feel like you're ready. But I feel like, especially just being a broke musician, like struggling along trying to make this dream happen, like when you're so tunnel vision on something, it's hard to think about things outside that realm. So like having babies isn't really part of the rock and roll lifestyle, or I guess having babies is, but taking care of babies is not. And I'm not the type of person to ditch a responsibility, or like I didn't want to be just a kid, like a guy the kids saw once in a while or whatever. Like I wanted to be there hands on. So, it was never something I prepared for, but once it happened, it was just gung ho all in.
Yeah, yeah, I get that. So you kind of said then that you wanted to be there. You're there kind of constantly. Like, where does that come from? Is that just an inherent thing? Is that descriptive of how you were raised?
I mean, I think it's a little bit of both. My mom stayed home with my sister and I when we were young, until we were both a little bit older to take care of ourselves. And then my dad worked full time, doing like government work. So he was home. We'd see him every day, and whatever. But he was more the provider, the the, the old '50s dad role,
Yeah,
And I don't know. I think it's just who I am, that like I want to be a huge part of this kid's life, not just a part, but like I want him to look up to me in some weird like way, not like he has to worship me, but
yeah,
I definitely know like I've put every ounce of my being into like being your dad.
Nice. I like that. So, talk about your dad. Can you describe the relationship with your dad?
Yeah, it's good. I mean, I think I got my messed up sense of humor and definitely like a little bit of my my attitude from him. And when I was younger, he he would come out to like my plays, support me through stuff like that. But you could tell he was just kind of like uh happier once I got older and he had somebody he could like talk to, and like now we can split a whiskey and a cigar and like sit down and be pals. Like we didn't have a very like buddy buddy relationship as a kid. Like it was always dad son. And now I feel like now that I'm older, like it's definitely gotten cooler and easier. And obviously boys and their dads butt heads, and I'm probably gonna butt heads with this kid. I already do, but
Yeah.
it's I don't know. I hope that I could have more of a like involved relationship with this kid, and like tell him all the stories. If he has questions, answer them as honestly as I can. Obviously not be like, yeah, let me tell you about the time your dad passed out behind a 7-Eleven. But
How's your dad kind of dealt with being a grandpa? Has that kind of changed him too?
it's
Have you seen
weird. I have never seen him so like lovey-dovey. So it's funny to see him like stepping into a grandpa role where he's very like soft and tender around the kid, and like you can see his eyes light up. Like I don't know, maybe I was just like a bad kid. I don't think I was a bad kid, but I definitely had my moments of disappointing my parents. So I didn't see that light as often.
Oh, don't be hard. That's a common theme too. I've had a number of guests, and when they talk about their dad, they're quite similar stories. Like, yeah, provider, he was there. Like, he was there. It sounds like he was there. He was involved, but wasn't like, taking you out skate. Well, I don't know. I could be wrong, but taking you out. But it was just like, okay, I'm coming home. Okay, we're gonna have dinner. Okay, maybe he goes watch sports or something like that. But
Yeah,
he's there, but so there's been that kind of theme of all my guests for a lot of my guests, and then once they have the kid and that turn to that grandpa role, it's like it's super interesting to me as to like what happens.
I think it's a
Is there?
generational thing too. Like especially like if you're like 35 and younger, your dad came from like the 50s. He was born in the 50s, so his dad was probably a hard ass and like really weird. So you know the generation that I'm growing up in, men are allowed to be a little softer, a little more sensitive, a little more in tune with like their softer side and like showing emotion. So I understand where my dad came from. Now when I was a kid I kind of didn't understand, but like I understand like the difference between his childhood and my childhood was stark. It's crazy. So it's not like in any way he was like a bad dad or a mean
Right?
guy.
I didn't.
They're just they're a different generation, and I think the sissy millennials are gonna handle being a dad just differently than the boomers did.
Ooh, I like that. I'm going to use that millennials versus the boomer piece. What are some important lessons you think that you kind of want to teach your kid as you kind of navigate this fatherhood idea?
The one thing I think about the most is just I want him to be free to be himself, and like take any risk that he wants and follow his dreams, but also understand that he has to work for it. I think that's something that I learned really early on being a musician is like you could do anything you want in this world, but you really have to work for it. And sometimes you can work really hard for it and it just doesn't work out anyway. But that doesn't mean not to try. Just always have a backup plan and just kind of do your best.
I like that answer. That's kind of like what Rad Dads is really about too. Is like having, and that's why you're here. With the discussion, the whole idea when I first started the podcast or the conversation, it was to like interview dads that inspire us in their work or their art or their music, and so they're kind of like doing them, but also at the same time, their dads. They have all these other responsibilities, but kind of taking time for yourself to me is really important because I think it makes me a better person and a better dad. And so is that something you're cognizant of too? It's like you still, I know it's the pandemic with the music type stuff, but you're still, it seems like you're really, really passionate. You still want to do it. Is that something that's like, hey, I'm focusing on my music, but I'm still a dad? Like,
Yeah, I um I definitely still try to make time to do music and do the things that I want to do, and
I
it
guess
allows me to kind of reflect on all the other stuff.
yeah, I guess my question there was this: what do you do to take time for yourself?
Yeah, just that I still play music. It's I don't really have much free time anymore, just because it's either working, hanging out with the kid, or trying to get some family time in with the wife. But yeah, music is my release. Music is what I do to still feel connected to the world. Otherwise, I would just be like a floating head.
There you go. Definitely a juggling thing. So let's kind of transition a little bit. You've already mentioned that you're kind of you're working and the music is you're doing some of the live stream stuff. But you just put out an EP, right, in January? Can you talk about
That's
that?
correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I put out an EP called Canciones con Queso, which in Spanish means songs with cheese, or in my loose translation, it means cheesy songs. Um, and it's still in the wheel of what I do, which is like folky, punky, Johnny Cash meets Blink 182. But just for this one, I decided to go balls to the wall, and we did a full mariachi style album. So usually it's just like guitar, bass, drums, and we throw in a couple accent instruments. But this one was we got trumpets, we got accordion, we got the whole nine yards, and it definitely sounds bigger than pretty much anything I've done yet.
Nice. And so, like, what made you put out that EP kind of during this time? It was just a matter of you kind of had it and you wanted to, because I know a lot of bands that they've had some stuff and they're just waiting kind of more, but you were
Yeah,
kind of cognizant of just let's put it out. Is that?
that's basically what it was. I mean,
Yep.
we've been working on it for a couple of years, four, I guess if I'm going to be honest, we've been working on it for a few years, but it it just kind of finished around the time that all this was going down. When we planned it to come out, uh, pandemic had already hit, and we just figured, even if I can't do a show to promote it or really get out there and run it through the city, it might be something that my few fans and friends would just enjoy during a pandemic. Just something to take their mind off things. So, and
Right.
it's a pretty funny little album. So it at least will brighten your 10 minutes. It's only 10 minutes
All
long.
right. Bring some joy for sure. That's rad. Um, has have you been writing songs?
Yeah,
Yeah.
already working on the next album.
Here's a question. I'm always curious. Has having or becoming a dad changed your songs and like how you approach music?
No, and I think
No.
it might not be the best way to approach it, but I mean, I still, um, I especially live streaming. And he's 8 months old. He's not going to start repeating this stuff for a while. But some of my songs, you definitely wouldn't want to come out of like a young child's mouth. But it's just gonna be a conversation he and I have to have later, where it's like, this is daddy's music, and this is what music is. People can express themselves through art, and I want you to be able to express yourself, but maybe leave the F words away from school and don't say them with your mom. But I've got some kind of dicey songs, so I'm not gonna like go out of my way to be like, learn this, but I'm also not gonna hide who I am from him at all, because he'll find out eventually.
Yeah, exactly. It's I think it's important just to be kind of upfront and kind of educate them, you know, as we go through. I listen to a lot of punk music too, and some of the the language, and I don't hide it from my son, and you just have that
Yeah,
conversation, and
he's gonna grow up around NoFX and like gangster rap and all sorts of stuff, so he's gonna learn.
right, exactly. Um, okay, last two questions here. Do you? I don't know. I always put. I should have gave you a heads up with this one. Do you have a favorite dad joke that you can
Oh
share?
yeah, of
Do
course.
it. Do it.
What's a ghost's favorite lunch meat?
I don't know.
Booloney.
That's a good one. Okay, I like that.
Yeah.
And yeah, last question. Any fatherly words of wisdom to any of the rad dads or new dads out there listening to this?
Um, it's tough in the beginning, but just stick it through, because it gets really awesome really fast. And just don't lose who you are. Don't Unless you're a terrible person, then fix who you are. And
Really awesome, really fast. I like that. Okay, BJ, thanks so much for the conversation. Um, Appreciate your time. And
thanks for
I'll
having
kind of,
me.
yeah, thanks, man.